Hey everybody, welcome back to a Banished tutorial video. So today we're going to look at the big question that everybody has when they first start playing, which is, how do I get through those first couple of years without everybody dying? I'm starving everyone. So we're going to cover sort of the basic buildings and making it through your first couple of winters. One mistake a lot of people make because they played a lot of building games or survival games is that they like to build those farms right away. So farms are kind of a mistake to build right away in Banished, because the first season you're not going to see a lot of production from those farms by the time you get them built, and your people are going to need to be building other things very, very quickly. So we're going to do this right away. So this little town that we've got here, Bristol, is pretty nicely situated. We got this little tiny area over here that we can build in, but behind that, look at all this space that we've got. Nice big open space that we're going to be able to expand into later. So for now, we just need everybody to make it through the first couple of winters, and we need to get some food production going. So the best units to get going with your food production are going to be your gathering huts. So your gathering hut, I'm going to put this one over here, and he wants to be kind of away from everything. He wants to be near forests. Mature forests are best. So a lot of times people will put a few buildings together. They'll put an herbalist and they'll put a forester's hut in there so that that forest can always be big and full, and thus you're always bringing in a lot more food. So we will indeed do that, but we're not going to do it just yet. Where did I put that guy now? So anyways, we're going to give them a road to get over here if they need to. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get those people bringing in all of this stuff, all these resources from close by, because we are, of course, going to be building into this area. So your basic things that you're going to have to get sorted out right away are your food and your shelter. A lot of people like to use the wood huts right off the bat. I'm kind of more of a fan of the stone houses because we're here for the long run. We're not just building for a short period of time. So I'm going to put in at least 4 of those. It's probably going to take 5 by the time all of these families get in here. So we're going to put a few people on as builders. We're going to keep a few of them as laborers so that they're getting both of those jobs done at the same time. So we're going to send them off to the races right now. An important tool to know about is in the tools and reports, there's this up arrow here that says increase priority. That's a good one because you can tell people, like, hey, I need this building built fast. Get to it. I like to spam it 4 or 5 times just to really drive the point home. And that'll get your laborers and people move into that area more quickly and clearing out, getting them gatherers up. Now you can see we've got 1,800 units of food, which seems like a lot, but it's not actually going to last us that long. Once those houses get built, they're going to take a bunch of that, put it in their inventory. It'll certainly be enough to get us through that first winter, but we're going to need some food production coming in right on top of that. And if we don't have it, then that's when people are going to start dropping off. So, not much to do while that's happening. We don't want to add too many other things for them to build. If we add too many other things, then they're trying to build 12 things at the same time, and none of them are going to get done. The other thing you can do, you can also pause building on a couple of these if you want them to focus, and you'll see that the number of builders drops down because they're no longer needed. And they'll start focusing more on the ones that are left. And if we want to really focus them, we can say, hey, focus on these ones. Let's go. Of course, every time you increase the priority on the thing that you're looking in front of, you're decreasing the priority on the thing beside it. So be careful with that you're not, robbing Peter to pay Paul, as they say. Alright, so we got one house up and running. Here comes number 2 right behind it. So I'm going to unpause these guys are doing a pretty good job getting it done. We are moving at 10 times speed. We're moving very quickly right now, just to kind of show you guys, so you don't have to sit here for an hour and watch. Maybe you want to sit here for an hour and watch. Well, we'll take care of that later. Right now, we just want to quickly show you how to get going so you can play your own games. We're running low on stone, so we're going to make sure that all of that's being pulled too. Collecting that stone. There's lots of stone in this area, which is really nice. It's going to make things easier for us as far as building the stone houses. This is the downside to building the stone houses, of course, is you do need a lot more of that, and you're going to need some iron. If you're just building the wood huts or houses, you just need a little bit of stone and a bunch of wood, so that becomes easier to deal with. But we're doing all right. It's early summer. We have our gatherer's hut is now done, so we can put a couple people on that, and they're going to start bringing in some food. You can see our food number is dropping now because every time one of these houses gets built, they're grabbing a couple hundred units of potato. We've got 8 people left, so I can see right now we're going to need at least one more house, because there's no way all 8 of those people are going to live together as one family. But so far so good, so far so good. So once the immediate need of a house is taken care of, the next thing is we're going to start looking towards are things like putting a woodcutter in to make sure that they've got enough firewood to make it through the winter. We've got stone houses, which means they're not going to use as much firewood as they would if they have a wood house, but we're still going to need some firewood. So that's going to be the next thing we're focusing on. We're doing all right. We don't have too many things on the build right now. So as soon as that guy's done, I'm going to put a woodcutter in. Now I like to put those right close to our stockpile because that's where they're going to be pulling the logs from, of course. So it tends to work really well to have those two things very close together. And of course there's one more house that is just about done. We've got all the resources we need for that. We're going to need a little bit more stone to finish that. So that's one thing to keep an eye on, is if you're going to be queuing up a bunch of things to be built, just make sure that you've got the resources to actually build them. I'm just going to get my extra guys to start gathering a bunch of that stone up because you know we're going to be using it at some point here. So the next thing I want to do after I've got that guy in is another source of food. There's a lot of controversy about fishermen. Some people really don't like them. They don't think they're very useful. I'm kind of a fan of them. They do bring in food pretty much all year round. They may not be the most efficient, but they tend to build up, especially once you get another source of food coming in. Then the fish can be used for trading, and that can be very lucrative when you're trying to create an economy later on. So our woodcutter's done. I'm going to put one guy to work on that. We can see if we've got any... Yeah, we've got our gatherers have brought in some mushrooms, so they're going to bring in little dribs and drabs of food. The other thing that we could look at starting right now is putting in a crop field. It's autumn, so we're not going to get anything out of the crops this year, but they'll be ready to go for next year. So just looking for a nice flat place. Just going to put in a couple sort of sizable crop fields here. But we definitely want our priority to be the fishermen, because they can work through the winter. So we got our gatherers doing some gathering. We're going to want to put in a forester's hut over there at some point soon. And we're also going to need a blacksmith. And that's fine, because we can wait a little bit on that. We're not in any danger of running out of tools. And if we do, we have enough logs and we've got enough iron that won't be a problem either. So everything's going along swimmingly, other than the fact that we have no food stored. But as you can see, all of our houses have a decent amount of food. So they are not going to starve, and our fishermen are ready to use our fishing. So we're going to put all those guys in. We're going to fill up the gathering hut. We've got 2 builders. It says we need 8, but really those are just for the fields here. I'm not going to sweat that. So if we wanted now, we could queue up that blacksmith. These are sort of our base level buildings that we're going to need that keep us functioning. There's other buildings that we're going to add later, things like hospitals and schools and wells, but we don't need those right away. I mean, we might get really unfortunate and have a fire in the first year, but if that's the case, then maybe that's how it was meant to be. We were never meant to be here. But we'll hedge our bets, and we'll take our chances rather, we'll let that go. So you can see our woodcutter has now cut 200 firewood. So it's important that you keep that cap low early on. If the cap goes too high, he's just going to keep cutting all the logs that come in. If you're trying to build buildings at the same time, it's going to make things a little bit tricky for you. So the things we're short on right now, we need a little bit more iron, we need a little bit more stone to finish up our blacksmith. And that's okay. Again, we're not in any rush for anything at this point. We've got a little bit of food trickling in just in case. I'm still going to speed up to 10 times now, just while they're gathering those resources. It's a good idea to have the resources you need before you start building, because otherwise it's just keeping things, you know, continually waiting for that to be completed, and those people aren't really doing anything at that point. But so be it. So be it, I say. There's a bunch more stone over here. We could tell them to go and get that. Our little gatherers are happily working away over there. Earlier I said that you should worry about keeping your firewood limit low because you don't want to use up all the log. The food limit, I mean, I keep it low to start with, but as soon as you start producing food, you might want to start jacking that up, because you don't really ever want to not bring in more food. Even if you're running out of space for it, it can't hurt. So we have pumpkin and we have squash. So the pumpkin will be ready earlier than the squash, but both of them will last a little bit into the winter, so not bad crops to have. Something like beans or peppers are generally finished a bit earlier in the season, so those are good ones to get early on too. Once you're in a position to have your trading hub and start bringing that stuff in. And our other field will be ready shortly, so this field's ready to go. And this one I'm going to set the squash, so both of our fields are ready to go, and you can see it just hit early spring. So we're going to grab everybody who's free, and I'm actually going to grab a couple of the other people from the gatherer and the fisherman and make them plant fields, because we really want to make sure that our food is coming in. Again, we don't have a ton of food right now, and if we kept going, unless those gatherers really start pounding the food in, we're going to run out. We could have put another gatherer over in this area here, and that probably wouldn't have been a bad idea at all. But I think we're going to be okay here. So you can see now that we're starting to bring in food. There's a yield. Once that yield starts increasing, you could actually take those farmers out of the field. So you could just reduce the number down to 0, and it'll keep going until it's time to harvest, in which case you'd of course need to put people back in the field. So, but they're good for now. We're going to let them go. Our woodcutter is back at work. He's now only has 120 stored up, so he's gonna, you can see him there. He's going to the field, jobbing, going to grab more wood, jobbing, gather up his wood, etc., etc., etc. So he's going to keep doing that. Probably when he hits the limit again, I'll make him the blacksmith for a little while. Once a game gets going, you're going to kind of want those people to stay in their jobs. They'll get better at their jobs, that kind of thing. You want them to stay committed to a job, but for now, we just kind of need everybody to chip in and do everything. So he's at 180, and maybe I'll just pull him a little bit early, and we're going to put him over in the blacksmith hut so that he's not running out of tools. You wouldn't want to do that. It's not the end of the world, but as soon as you see the tools missing, anything on the top line of this little info bar, that's where you're going to see homeless people, that's where you're going to see sick people, those icons are going to pop up. As soon as you see those things, you're going to want to take care of that pretty fast. So, where are we with our food? Our pumpkin's at 31%, squash is at 24%, so it's still going to be a little while before those are ready to go. We got our firewood full up. Maybe we'll put in that forester's hut now. And also, we need to put in an herbalist. That's something that I forgot to do earlier. So they're going to... the herbalist is going to keep people from getting sick while they're... while we're waiting for more kinds of food to come in, and it'll keep their diet more rounded so they don't get sick as easily. One thing that you might want to do here with this particular map, our storage yard is way over here, And the buildings we want to build are in closer, so those guys are going to take this stone, carry it all the way back. We don't really want them to do that, so I'm going to put a little stockpile in here, and I'm going to get them to build that first. And that way, anything else that they're pulling, they can then just grab the stuff from here, because this is where it's going to end up. As you can see right away, through some of those logs in there. So anyone that's like grabbing this stone that I'm going to tell them, hey, get this stone, hurry up with it, they're going to actually store it close by, which is what we want, instead of taking it back halfway across the flag. See there, they're going to start. So they'll be doing that. We're going to come back over here, have a look. Oh, you can see our food is just coming in, our pumpkin and our squash. So we have about just under 500 units of pumpkin. Squash will probably be somewhere in the same neighborhood, though it's starting to freeze. So we want those guys to hurry up and get that food out. Now we've only got 2 people working this field, which is one of the things that's sort of slowing down that production. As the years go on and we have more laborers, we'll be able to devote a few more people to that. In fact, right now I can throw a couple more people in to help pull that out. You really don't want to leave any food behind, right? So yeah, we've got just under 1,000 units. We got our fishermen bringing in more. We don't want to leave those farmers in the fields for the rest of the winter because they're not doing anything. They're not going to produce any food. It doesn't matter how long we leave them there, they're not going to. I'm thinking I'm going to build a second fishing dock. One thing that's important is that you don't put it within that same circle. See how that guy's got that circle, right? We want to get him a little further away because otherwise they're just basically competing for that same amount of fish. It's not like they're the game doesn't double the amount of fish that show up there, so if that makes sense. I don't know if that made sense. So these 2 buildings are going quick. The Forester's Lodge is done. I like to take the cut off. I like to leave them just planting. When it's time to harvest, I send the laborers in to chop down the trees. And that way you get a more sort of full, lush forest that the gatherers can make use of and the herbalists can make use of. Because both of those depend on having more forest in the area, as would a hunting lodge. So that would be another thing we'd want to think about putting in. That will also give us leather, which will help us to put in some more, to make some more clothing with our tailors. That's what I call like a phase 2 building, or a sort of secondary building. We're going to start looking at those pretty soon once everything here is up and running. I would say at this point we seem like we're pretty safe. We've got 1,200 units of food. That's easily going to last us through the winter. We're going to bring even more food in next year. Our concerns shortly are going to be the fact that we've got only 3 children and nobody following up after that. So we're going to have to put in more houses to convince the people to make more babies, because we're going to need more people. Because the older people are going to start dying off from old age on us, and we don't want that. So now we got some herbs coming in, we got some food coming in from the gatherers, we've got some forest being built back there. Looking good. And sorry, it's early spring, so I need to get my farmers back out in the fields. We don't want to leave them there. Right now we're building nothing, so we don't need to leave any builders in the building slots. Later in the game you're going to want to have 1 or 2 laborers sitting there doing nothing, just in case somebody dies. Then that job gets filled right away. If it's something like your teacher, if there's 20 students and your teacher dies, all those students immediately become adults and go into the labor force instead of, you know, somebody else taking over as a teacher. And you kind of don't want that, because if you spent all that time putting them in school, you definitely want to get the benefit from that. Okay, so now we have 2 fishing docks, we've got a gatherer's hut, and we've got 2 fields that are being worked. So our food situation is going to be just fine for the next few years. We're going to start bringing in way more food than we can eat. Kind of already are, really, because we made it through that winter with 900 units. Our blacksmith has hit 50, so we've got 50 tools. I'm not going to increase that limit. We want to keep that one nice and low. And logs, again, firewood's not going to be a big problem for us because we've got those stone buildings. Our forester here is going to start filling in and planting within this radius here, you can see. So any trees we cut down over here will stay cut down unless we put another forester's lodge in, which we could easily do, say, over here. I'm not really going to do that at this point, but you certainly could. So we got 347 units of fish on top of all the other food that's coming in. Still haven't eaten all the pumpkin and squash that we built last year, or we brought in last year. So yeah, our food situation is looking pretty good. We're a little bit short on iron right now. Might want to sort of send some people out to grab some irons in case we want to build another building at some point, and we'll have that on hand, so I can tell them to go and collect that iron. So shortly we're going to move into that sort of phase 2 where we're going to start looking at things we can add to make the town start growing and to make the town better. So we're going to start looking at the secondary buildings like the tailors and the brewers and maybe the herdsmen. Now because we're playing medium, we're not going to have any animals right away, so we're going to have to put a trading post in. That takes a lot of resources, so that's something we might want to consider. Start saving up for a trading post, because once you have that trading post, you can start bringing in your influencing your economy by bringing in sheep is a favorite way of mine to go. Might not be yours, don't know. But once we start doing things like that, then we can start trading and selling and reducing the need for having to harvest and bring in everything on our own. So yeah, I would say we are off to the races. We are up to 1,600 units of food and still being pulled out of the fields as we speak. So we'll just wait for the end of this harvest and see where we're at. But things are looking rosy for the people of Bristol, who were all banished from the other town because of their views about how the pork should be eaten, or possibly because they put their elbows on the dinner table. We're not really sure. I think it might be the latter. Or maybe they were fans of Justin Bieber and kicked out of the town because of that. I don't know. So we've got 1,100 pumpkin units. We've got 1,100 squash units. We got tons of food. We got 3,000 food units. We are golden for a while, food-wise. And late autumn's coming, so again, there's nothing growing right now in the fields. Take the farmers out. The one thing you have to watch is, if you're going to do that, you got to keep an eye on your clock to make sure that when spring comes around that you're putting those guys back in the field. Otherwise, they don't grow anything, and then that could get pretty serious for you pretty fast. Okay, so that's where we're at. Our phase 1 is done. We've got some buildings, we've got some food coming in, and nobody died. You've got 25 people, and things are looking rosy. So thanks very much for watching the video. If you do have the time, I really appreciate it if you could like the video, or if you could subscribe to the channel. That would be wonderful, and I will try to keep making more videos to keep everybody happy. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you soon.